Have you ever read a book? Have you ever read a book in a language you don't know? Yeah, me neither. So in that initial Japanese binge from like 2 years ago where I said I got 300 games, technically those boxes had 300 games and books. So finally, almost over 2 years later, we're going to go through all of those Japanese books that I got. They're all strategy guides, so I think it'll be good. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. This is mostly my reaction as I was researching, so you're going to kind of follow the path of like, oh, I learned this as I went along, and it's kind of cool. But let's dive right into it. So, like I said, everything that I got in this video is a strategy guide in one way or another. Maybe like kind of magazine toward the end, but whatever the case is, let's start with the system that started it all, the Famicom. And this first guide is, of course, Super Mario Bros. So this game needs no introduction, but the game released in September 1985, and this book, I couldn't find anything about it. So like I said, my goal in this episode was to research the books, get maybe some context about it, but I tried to cross-check these books via their ISBNs, and this specific ISBN tracks back to a full-color and more well-designed version of this book, but I can't find this plain cover version. The full-color version was also released in 1985, so perhaps this is just some alternate version. It doesn't look like it's missing any pages, so like, I have no idea. Regardless, it looks Nintendo published. The book is very well detailed, with it even giving exactly how to get to the final Bowser, which like I could totally use. The only review I could find about it was a 2006 Japanese Amazon review, so like that's kind of cool, but also a pretty random place to find it. Moving on, the next book that we have is Top Gun. So Top Gun, of course, the movie was released in the 80s, big cult classic for film connoisseurs, if you will. And the game released first in North America in November 1987, and then went to Japan a month later in December 1987, and this book was also released at some point in 1987. The game is a shmup based on that iconic film from just a year prior, and it looks like the book has everything from what to do in the missions to the different war machines you can buy or battle against. I'm not super sure. Like I said, I can't read in Japanese. So no Google search shows anything potentially about the book, only eBay listings for it, but at the very least, the strategy guide part is a book-ended... The strategy guide part is book-ended by a manga, I'm assuming, about the movie, so like that's kind of cool. I've never seen the movie, I'm being super real, so I don't know if there's a pretty blonde character that is some kind of love interest, but there is one drawn to be such a thing in this like book-ending manga, so I guess it gave young boys in Japan something to look at while they were trying to figure out the game, but who knows, it's manga, I don't know. Next up, we've talked a little bit about the PC Engine on this channel, and I initially got this book in that lot, and I didn't know what the PC Engine was at the time, so I had to enlist the help of Chris at Rewind Arcade just to figure out what the heck it was. So this is Special Rescue Team. He told me, or Chris told me, that it looks like a small supplementary strategy guide to a PC Engine magazine called Gekken PC Engine that released in Japan. It doesn't have an ISBN, but this looks like it was released in June 1989, which doesn't match any of the Special Rescue Team magazine scans from that era, but like that's the best I got. He said that R-Type and Space Harrier are two of the games on the front, so like that's how we knew it was PC Engine. And just on the inside, there's a table of contents that has different sections for RPGs, adventure games, action games, shooting games, and etc. But the actual guide has everything from maps to Q&As to descriptions for each stage in certain games. So despite it being really small and thin, it's got a decent amount of info, if I'm being super honest. And yeah, this is just a cool little piece to add, about PC Engine stuff after I've talked a little bit about it here and there. So anyway, moving on to systems we do know. In North America, we got Donkey Kong Country, but in Japan, they got Super Donkey Kong, and I got 2 of those guides. So they're a little different. I'm going to talk about this one first, and yeah, here we go. So all 3 regions of Donkey Kong Country released within a week of each other in November 1994. Apparently, because Europe, North America, and Japan, which is always weird, but Europe got it first. So all quick releases, but Europe getting it first. It actually kind of makes sense because Rare, I believe, is UK based, I'm pretty sure. So I like this first one a lot because it gives full actual screenshots of every level and not just recreated maps with arrows like that Super Mario Bros. Guide. And even though the side-scrolling levels are really long, they present it in a nice left to right row form that's easy to follow. And the more 2D levels, like the water levels, have all the maps in one place. So I'm a really big fan of this one. This is one I definitely would have used when I was growing up. What's weird though is that this one says it was released in 1995, but it's a little weird because of this next one that says 101% on it. So I didn't know this prior to researching, and I want to keep the order of how I researched it, but this 101% guide was apparently released in December 1994. So before this 1995 guide. I think that's really weird. So they both seem Nintendo official, and it does actually make sense when going through the book, since this one had a mix of redrawn levels and screenshots, where the other one has entirely actual gameplay screenshots. But like, some of the screenshots are really bad. So it's the same guide, just not as good looking. So maybe Nintendo was like, we got to put out a different one. And so they did. So this one came first, then the other one, at least with updated screenshots. I guess they just wanted to put the 101% on here. I'm not going to lie, I'm not really sure if this guide is 101% either. But whatever the case is, the only thing I think I can say about this one is that I'm pretty sure the 101% refers to all like discovering the hidden rooms in the game. Like most levels in Donkey Kong Country have like a hidden room that you get with like I think it's Rambi or like barrels that you break into these rooms. So this book is supposed to give all that info as to how to get all those hidden rooms. So I don't know if this other guide that technically came out afterwards also does that, but I would think that it would have wanted to say 101% on it. If it did, I don't know. No idea. So whatever, it's kind of cool. But one of the sequels to the iconic first Donkey Kong Country was Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble, or better known as Super Donkey Kong 3, Natsu no Kremshima in Japan. So the game released in North America and Japan in November 1996. The second Donkey Kong Country was released in November 1995, so it's like a yearly release. I grew up playing Super Mario Bros. And the first two Donkey Kong Countries on GBA, but I don't remember playing this one, so I might have had it, I might have not have had it. I'm leaning towards I didn't have it, and it shows since I don't remember any of the levels in this book. So this also Nintendo published guide in January or February 1997 follows suit to that first Donkey Kong Country guide I showed, where the levels are fully screenshotted and put into the game, but I don't know why these screenshots look lower quality than the other guide. Not that the other ones were great, but like these look worse. So I don't know if it was the detail in the game or the actual quality of the equipment, but yeah, like, not the prettiest, but it's still cool to have. But guess who's not going to track down that second Donkey Kong Country guide, because I only got these because they were cheap. I just went back and looked at that same seller from way back. They have a Mario Kart Wii guide for under $2, but with $20 shipping. No, I gotta stop. Anyway, so we're sticking to the Super Famicom. With the major success of the first 3/4 Super Mario Bros. Games, when the Super Famicom came out, Nintendo had they just had to find a way to get all of those like major releases onto the system. So they came out with Super Mario Collection, first releasing in Japan in July 1993, and then North America a month later in August 1993 as Super Mario All-Stars. So this guide is for that. The game contains remakes of the first 4 Famicom/NES Super Mario Bros. Games, but let me explain why I say 4. So this 1993 boy is thick, with it containing guides for all 4 of the games, those 4 games being Super Mario Bros., the one that we all know and love. And Super Mario Bros. 2 is a little complicated because the version of Super Mario Bros. 2 that Japan got looks a lot like Super Mario Bros. 1, but the Super Mario Bros. 2 that North America got was a like reskin or rebranding with like Doki Doki Panic. I think that's the game. So there's technically 2 versions of Super Mario Bros. 2. Japan Super Mario Bros. 2 is Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels to us. and Super Mario Bros. 2 to North America is Super Mario USA to Japan. And then we reconverge into Super Mario Bros. 3, so that's why there's 4 games. But anyway, this guide is huge. It has everything from the world maps in Mario 3 to completely redrawn levels for all 4 games, very much like that second Donkey Kong Country guide I showed. And there's really not much else to say aside from that. I mean, there's more, interesting info about the game being a compilation on the Super Nintendo, but I will admit that the redrawings are quite a bit more charming than in the Donkey Kong Country guide, so there's that. After Mario 3 on Famicom and NES, I don't know if it's the first Super Mario game on Super Nintendo, but regardless, Super Mario World 1 was a launch title for the... No, it's a launch title. What am I talking about? So Super Mario World was a launch title for the Super Nintendo. Super Mario Collection came after that. But Super Mario World had a single sequel, and that is Super Mario Yoshi Island, or in North America, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. So both of them released in August and October 1995, respectively. I played some version of Mario 1 through 3 when I was growing up, all on the Game Boy Advance, but the World games, I never played them, not even on Game Boy Advance. And in effect of that, I didn't even know what this game looked like, which I didn't realize until I was trying to figure out if the guide was screenshotted or redrawn. And it actually seems like a hybrid of both, with some key events being screenshotted, like Bowser appearing at the end, but the levels themselves are redrawn. I'm pretty sure. Like I said, I never saw gameplay of Mario World 2, so there's that. I don't have much else to say since I don't really know this game, but this is another big boy. Like this one's like taller than all the other guys I'm going to show, and it kind of sticks out where I store it, so like that's a pain in the butt. But anyway, it also has a ton of game advertisements on the last page, including Super Donkey Kong, Mother 2, Super Metroid, Wario Land, Fire Emblem, all with prices and short descriptions. So like that's super neat. One thing I did realize after doing this one, though, is that the Mario games all have this bland black and white cover, but the Donkey Kong Country covers were fully covered, but they had slip covers. So I'm realizing that the first Super Mario Bros. Guide might have just been missing like the slip cover. It's still cool, but like I realized that after the fact. Still kind of tragic. Moving on from the Super Famicom and bouncing around between game series, we have a guide for the Nintendo 64 Doraemon game. So this is Doraemon Nobita to 3 Su no Seireiseki, which was released only in Japan in March 1997, with this guide coming 2 months later in May 1997. We've talked about this series a couple times, but basically, Doraemon is the little guy right here who is one of the most recognizable Japanese media icons to never super gain traction here in North America. But like, he's appeared, but just know that this man is famous. As we have now moved into the 3D platformer era of the N64, this game is exactly that, and this guide does something quite interesting, and I'm pretty sure, based on the screenshots on the same page, that they put the full 3D model of the level in the book, which is really, really cool if true. I could be wrong, but from like the looks of it, I'm pretty sure this is just like a full like model screenshot of like the actual like game development. I could be so wrong, but that's what it looks like to me, and I think that's really cool. It's got a ton of actual game screenshots. Early or mid 90s polygons are like really funny looking to me, and it also has this little manga at the end of the book, so like that's super cool. It's also the first book to be in manga form, forgive me, opening the opposite way that we are familiar with. So all these other books open the way us in North America expect, but this one opened the way it's supposed to in terms of manga. So I don't know, whatever. We continue to bounce between Mario and Donkey Kong and the occasional other series, so what do you think comes next? If you guessed the greatest 3D platform of all time, you'd be correct, and this is a guide for Super Mario 64, the definitive N64 launch title and N64 title in general. This guide released in October 1996 after its Japan N64 debut in June of that year. As some level of hybrid between previous Nintendo guides, this one is definitely more screenshot heavy, and good screenshots at that, with the world maps not being nearly as copy and paste as the far more simple Doraemon levels, but instead also being designed in 3D as opposed to hand-drawn? I'm not sure. I know it's 3D, I know it's more complicated, but it's funny to me how even the most iconic Mario games of all time are done in not screenshot form, which you think would have changed from the initial guide in 1985, but like, what do I know? It's just commentary, not critique. Yeah, I really need to play Mario 64. I want to play it on the original hardware, but I think maybe I'm gonna have to be okay with like playing it on, maybe on Switch. Is it on Switch Online? I know I have the 3D collection, so maybe I'll play it there. Next up is Zelda no Densetsu Toki no Ocarina. Okay, enough of that. I don't know anything about Legend of Zelda, but it's here. So that's all I have for home console, with the last 4 being on handheld consoles. So the first on Game Boy Color is Donkey Kong GB, Dinky Kong, and Dixie Kong, or Donkey Kong Land 3 on Game Boy here in North America. So to quickly go over that little quirk, with each of the 3 Donkey Kong Country games on Super Nintendo, Nintendo also released tamped down versions of them for the original Game Boy. I'm pretty sure they're tamped down versions of the Donkey Kong Country games, but they might also be games made on their own. I can't remember which way it goes, but one of those 2 ways. So the first 2 released in all regions, but for some reason the third one, the Donkey Kong Land 3, only released in Europe and North America, and then not in Japan. But Japan didn't completely miss out, however, as they had a Japan-only Game Boy Color update 3 years later with the aforementioned title, but Wikipedia notes that there were some features cut out, so I don't know what it was updated with, or if it's really just a cut-down version, but again, I'm pretty sure Donkey Kong Land 3 was on the original Game Boy, and this is a Game Boy Color title, so I don't know. Nonetheless, this one is, it's pretty funny, because despite Nintendo giving Donkey Kong Country a ton of love in the other Donkey Kong Country guides I showed, this one goes back to the redrawn design of the levels, and somehow the design looks even more basic than the older ones, so that's kind of funny. And it even has a basic redrawing of the Game Boy Color, so what are we doing here? This game came out the same year, 2000, as the game, but in 2000 the Game Boy Color was starting to go out, and the next console started to come back in, or not come back in, come in. So as the only system I played on this list growing up, I have a lot of nostalgia for this console, as well as this specific series, the classic NES series in North America, or the Famicom Mini series in Japan. So as it sounds, the classic NES series was a handful of NES games that were ported to the GBA, now that the GBA could run those old NES games. So some of the iconic games of the NES were ported in both North America and Japan, such as the first Castlevania, the arcade Donkey Kong, Excite Bike, Ice Climber, the first Metroid, the first Super Mario Bros., and the first 2 Legend of Zeldas, just among others. And we're gonna go into those. But the other Super Mario Bros. Games came to GBA, but they weren't under the classic NES series line. They were under the Super Mario Advance line. That's always weird to me. That's a completely different quirk. Anyway, so Japan got some more games in the equivalent Famicom Mini line, like both Famicom Detective Clubs, the arcade Mario Bros. Gundam game, the original Mario 2, and again, just more other iconic Famicom games that we got as iconic NES games. But so these 3 books were apparently in a line of Nintendo magazines called Nintendo Dream, which started on the N64 and went through the GBA and GameCube era. I thought these were specific Famicom Mini books, which would have been something, since these are pretty thick books for only a few games in the line, and then I thought, oh no, these are just like Nintendo monthly magazines with info about everything, but it turns out these are specific books for the Famicom Mini. I don't know if these are the only Famicom Mini Nintendo Dream magazines, but there are 30 games released under the Famicom Mini title, and each of these books has the guide for 10 unique games in the line. So I'm pretty sure I did actually get the guides for all 30 games. Some with redrawn guides, some with screenshots. I can't do this anymore. I don't know. Each one also has a table of contents with the games included, but also with their original release dates. So that's pretty neat. I like that. I couldn't quite decode the dates of each magazine, but using a calculation from the Super Mario Wiki, this first one is volume 113, releasing in May 2004, and includes Super Mario Bros., my 3rd version of Super Mario Bros. Guide-wise, Arcade Donkey Kong, Ice Climber, Excite Bike, the first Legend of Zelda, Pac-Man, Xevious, Mappy, Bomberman, and Star Soldier. The next one is volume 115, which would have been just a month later in June 2004, and includes Arcade, Mario Bros, Balloon Fight, Dr. Mario, Adventure Island, Twinbee, Clue Land, Wrecking Crew, Dig Dug, Ghosts and Goblins, and Ganbare Goemon. The last one is Volume 120, releasing in August 2004, and including Super Mario Bros. 2, which we call the Lost Levels, The Mysterious Murasame Castle, the first Metroid, Kid Icarus, Zelda 2, Shin Onigashima, which we've actually talked about before in a short a long time ago, both Famicom Detective Clubs, the first Castlevania, and that Gundam game. It took a really long time for me to decode some of those. So this was really cool to go through, but we haven't even addressed the biggest concern of this video yet. I don't even know how to read.